Lights, like actors, need a motivation. Each and every light placed on a set should perform a specific task. But to many filmmakers, lighting is something of a mystery. While there are many ways to light a set, the classic Hollywood-style lighting technique, known as three-point lighting, is probably the best place to start. In the next few minutes, we'll cover everything you need to know to get a solid lighting setup, regardless of where you're shooting. As the name suggests, three-point lighting uses exactly three light sources to cover a subject. Those three light sources are the key light, the fill light, and the backlight. The key light is the main light that illuminates a subject. A good starting point is to place the key light 45 degrees from the camera, which creates a nice contrast and keeps the shadow from appearing directly behind the subject. Then the key light can be raised 45 degrees off the floor, high enough that the shadow of the subject's nose doesn't fall across the cheek, instead casting downward. Obviously, you won't always have a 12-foot ceiling available to you, so you can move the light closer while maintaining the angle of the rays. This height also helps ensure that body shadows fall on the floor and not on nearby walls where they can appear distracting. Key lights can be hard or soft lights, depending on the requirements of the scene. A hard key light, most commonly from a spotlight, creates more definition and thus dimension. A softer key light from a broad diffuse light source can elicit a warmth to the scene and is also more flattering to human skin. Keep in mind that diffused light sources, which you use to create softness, don't throw as far as hard light sources, so soft light sources need to be placed closer to the subject. The fill light fills in the shadows created by the key light. The fill is placed on the opposite side of the camera to the key light from a point close to the camera's lens and at the same level. By placing the fill light at the same level as the camera, you avoid creating shadows that are visible to the camera. Fill lights are almost always soft lights, as the point is to fill in shadow detail, not create new, hard edges. Now, we've been talking about a fill light as a unique light source on the set, and indeed, it often is just that. But the role of fill light can also be played by a reflective bounce card. Such a card will reflect the illumination of the key light to fill in the shadow detail. This can be a white diffuse piece of foam core or a silver reflective surface. So what happens if bounce lighting isn't bright enough to adequately illuminate the shadows, but you lack another diffuse light source to use as your fill? One solution is to take a hard light source and bounce it off a white wall or reflector. This will create a softer light than shining it directly on your subject. Be careful with the angle though, you don't want to create any of those additional secondary shadows in the process. For low-key effects, like that classic black and white film noir look, the fill light can be greatly reduced or even omitted entirely. That brings us to the final light source in three-point lighting, the backlight. The backlight is placed on the opposite side of the subject of the camera, high enough to be out of frame. It's used to separate a subject from its background, adding a clear dimensionality to the composition. It does this by illuminating the top of an actor's shoulders and head, creating a haloed outline of the actor. A subtle backlight is sometimes called a hair light, since it creates a nice shine and separation to the hair. Another form of backlighting is the kicker. Like a standard backlight, a kicker also aims to add separation to a subject, but from a different position. Sometimes referred to as an edge light or rim light, it's usually placed directly opposite the key light and at about the same level as the subject. This will add a kick of light that pops or rakes across the cheek and jaw of an actor's face. The kicker is usually a small, low-powered, hard light source. You can actually use the concept of a kicker to your advantage in outdoor shots. Conventional wisdom is to place your subject facing the sun to get the best illumination. But to avoid the cowboy squint from your actors, you can instead have them facing away from the sun and treat the sun as your kicker light. Then you use a reflective bounce card to bounce the sun's light back onto your subject, illuminating them without the blinding effects of direct sunlight.